make this fall garland, and I know you do too. I've not made it. We're gonna make it together. We're gonna start with a bunch of fall pieces, okay? Then we're going to cut them in these cute little pennants, and then we're gonna put thankful on them. So let's start first by cutting them. Don't forget, when y'all make this, to email me a photo to hometownquiltcompany@gmail.com or tag me in your video. I want to see. Show and tell is my favorite. I'm starting with a layer cake full of a bunch of fall fabrics, and that's what I'm choosing from. But now you can make these. This would be great for scraps too. And y'all know I hand cut my pieces, and when I'm finished, I make a pattern for y'all. And this pattern is available at hometownquiltcompany.com. Now, I'm not sensitive. I love for my pieces to not necessarily match. I like the whimsy of it all. Or maybe I just don't take myself so seriously when I'm sewing. I definitely don't think it has to be perfect. If I waited until I had something perfect to show y'all, I'd never have anything, because nothing I do is perfect. But it's so much fun, and I'm just having a good time. And when we show our projects off, we don't say, look what I made, but I messed up here, here, and here, because they don't know if you don't tell them. And do they care if it's not perfect? No. And if they care, they're not your people. So make it, have a good time, embrace the imperfections, or as I like to call it, character, and show your projects off. Be proud of them. Something you created with your own hands. During my sewing classes, we have a meal, and I always say the blessing, and it always goes something like, Dear God, thank you for hands to sew and friends to sew with. And I'm thankful to be able to sew with y'all. He's so cute. Okay, so you can use anything you want. I don't want to waste, I know, I don't think I'm supposed to say that, but I don't want to waste my good fabric on the back of this, because this is going to be garland to hang up and you're not going to see the back. So I'm going to use some solid colors on the back, and I'm going to put felt in between mine, only because I have a bunch of felt. You can use anything you want. You can use batting, fleece, flannel, felt, whatever you've got. You do need something. You could use interfacing if you wanted to. You do need something to make it stiff so it'll stand up. Otherwise it's kind of droopy, and we don't want that. Got some solid gray broadcloth here. That's what I'm going to back mine with. Make sure you look at it, because whatever you see is how it's going to look whenever it's sewn. Pumpkin to pennant to felt to the back. Now, make sure that at the bottom, if your felt is larger, that you're going to catch both pieces of fabric, okay? If you are trying to conserve fabric, if it's going to be close or you're not quite sure you're going to have enough, then you can sew your design onto your pennant first. Sew your design onto your pennant, and then you can place it on your felt. Since I'm going to sew all of mine at one time, I want it to be a little bit bigger to give myself some grace. These pennants started out at 10 inches, so they're about 10 inches by 10 inches, minus the little corner of them. The template for these pennants and all these letters and the pumpkins are available at hometownquiltcompany.com. When I was making this, I couldn't help but think of all the things that I'm thankful for. I think I'm thankful most of the year. Most of the year. I'd like to say all the year, but I'm probably not thankful all of the year. But I am grateful that once a year, our focus is intentionally shifted to the things that we're thankful for. We've pinned them all. Let's go sew them. So while I was pinning, I was trying to decide what color was I going to sew this with. Not that color. I'm going to sew it with brown thread, because most of my colors are super warm. This banner has a whole bunch of warm colors in it, so the brown's going to look great, I think, and it's not going to yell at you, and that's what we want. We just don't want the thread yelling at you. We want to see what we've created and not the thread color. Let's sew them together. So you can do it two different ways. Way number one, you can sew your letter onto your pennant and then pin your middle piece and your back piece together. Or you can pin it all together like I've chosen to do and sew it on all at one time. Now, if you sewed your letter to your pennant first and then pinned it to your back piece and your middle piece, you wouldn't be able to see the stitching from the letter on the back side. You can see the stitching from my letter on the back side, but I don't care. If you do, sew your letter to your pennant front first and then stitch the rest of it together. So I'm going to zigzag all the way around my letter. I'm just gonna go around one time. I always tell y'all 2 times. If it's gonna be washed, it needs 2 times, but I'm not washing this, so I'm just doing it once. And then I'm gonna straight stitch around the pennant through all of the layers. Now I see lots of people sewing on the internet who don't backstitch, but over here we backstitch every time. Every time we start and every time we stop, because my grandma said so. And I'm scared my stuff is going to fall apart. She terrified me into backstitching always. Now, you ask yourself, when do you need to backstitch? And the answer is anytime you have either cut your thread, like whenever you're putting a project underneath your presser foot for the first time, or if you're going to cut your thread. So when you finish, you want to backstitch before you pull it out and cut your thread. So anytime you either have cut your thread or are going to cut your thread, you want to backstitch. I have a student who sings the mantra, pretty side to pretty side, backstitch, backstitch, because that's all I say during the entire class. Don't forget to put your fabric pretty side to pretty side, and don't forget to backstitch. We've sewn them all, so now let's cut them. My favorite Thanksgiving memory. My grandmother would always make deviled eggs, and you could never eat anything until lunch was ready, even though everything smelled delicious. And she would always make the deviled eggs and sneak a few to the side and put them in the refrigerator so that I could eat them when I got there. And we're talking about even as an adult. I was a 30-year-old woman sneaking the deviled eggs out so nobody could see me. I tried cutting them a bunch of different ways. I tried with pinking shears. There's a lot of layers of fabric, hurts my hands, didn't work for me. I tried a rotary cutter with a pinking shear blade. Too many layers of fabric, did great for the first few cuts, then stopped, didn't work for me. So I landed on scissors, but then I thought if I'm cutting them with scissors, I'll just cut them with my rotary cutter. So you can cut them with any of the things I just showed you. You do whatever works for you. And when you're done, they'll all look like this. You'll have your pennants made, and now we just need to attach them so we can make a banner. Okay, now it's time to put them together. I started with 1.5 inch satin ribbon. I folded it in half and I ironed it. Now, you can use bias tape, you can make your own, whatever you want to do. But I promised y'all, if ribbon was an option, we were going to use ribbon. Because when I first started sewing, all that cutting and ironing and sewing was very intimidating to me. And I didn't do it if I didn't have to. So I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to come down 24 inches. And that's where I'm going to start. If you are a pinner, you should pin here. I am not, but I am going to clip because I don't want it to move all over the place. I'm just clipping mine in one at a time as I get ready to sew them. Now, I'm still using brown thread because my ribbon's brown, but if I had changed colors of ribbon, if I had changed colors ribbon to like orange, for instance, I would have changed my thread to orange. But because I'm using brown ribbon, I'm going to continue to use the same brown thread. I want to know your favorite Thanksgiving memory. I've been asking my sewing students what theirs are, and they have been so heartwarming to listen to. Stories of cousins and grandparents and aunts and uncles and all of the food and the food mishaps. You know, the things that we think are going to be a good idea, but they really don't turn out to be such a great idea. The funny stories, the sentimental stories, it all has been so much fun to listen to my students relive them. When you get to the end, you're going to fold it under and back together, and then you're going to sew it. Now, you just made some super cute garland. Am I convinced I got all the letters in order? No. Let's see. Bum, bum, bum. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. Let's hang it up. Let's look at it. It's so cute. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher. I would love for you to come sew with me.